laughs. We're so happy you're here with us today. I'm Valerie Fitzgerald.
I'm Bob Hurwitz.
So today, Bob, we have a fabulous guest on our show, Georgina Jacobson. I've known Georgina for about 10 years. Not only is she beautiful inside and out, but she's a hugely successful agent in the areas of Newport Beach, Corona del Mar, Laguna Beach, and Irvine. She has many landmark sales and listings. Welcome, Georgina.
Thank you so much for having me, Valerie. It's so nice to be here.
Georgina, welcome to the show. And basically, the whole theme of the show is behind the curtain of real estate. No BS, stories, what really happened, really goes into it. We pull back the curtain, or in some cases, pull back the covers and see what's underneath there in the bed. So don't be afraid to hold back, because we want to hear it all.
Okay, perfect. Well, I was reflecting on this, and I've been in so many interesting situations over my career. And one that came to mind was, so a client, a beautiful listing, is $5 million. It's on the golf course, spectacular. And the owner says, would you mind feeding my cat while I go to Hawaii for 10 days? And I'm like, absolutely. All I do is drive around town. I'm happy to once a day, stop in, check on the cat, make sure everything is fine. So I get to the house, and the cat stays in a very large laundry room. It's very spacious. And so I open the door, and the cat is standing on the counter by the door, hissing at me and batting the door closed. And so I'm like, okay, wow. So this is going to take a little longer than I thought. And I said, I think I need some reinforcements. So I call my sisters. I've a bunch of sisters, but two live close by. I said, can you please come over and just help me assess the situation? So they're like, oh my gosh, why do you need our help? This is so funny. So anyway, we'll be right there. So they come over and they open the door. Same thing happens. We all burst out laughing. And I'm like, you guys, no, really, I have to feed this cat. So one of them gets some gloves from the kitchen, like some rubber gloves. One has a blanket. So it's a 3-person operation. And so we open the door, I throw the blanket over the cat. My sister gets the litter, the other one gets the food. So we do this for 10 days. And so the owner comes home and says, how did it go? I said, you know what, it went great. Everything went great. The house is perfect. We even showed it. Everything went great. And I was showing the house at that time. And so the owner, she says, okay, well, let me just put the cat in the laundry room for the showing. So she picks up the cat. The cat's looking me in the eyes. We don't have a good relationship, me and the cat. And the cat bites the owner. The cat flies off her shoulder, runs away. The owner is crying. She ends up in the, getting stitches in the emergency room. And it was just like the most stressful situation I think I've been in a really long time. So it was just, one of those things, you can't make this stuff up.
No, you can't. When we're responsible for their animals and they go on vacation, you think you're going to do someone a favor, and you're lucky the cat didn't run out the door or something.
I know. And 10 days here, I thought it would be like a quick, go in, go out, check on the cat, feed the cat. And it was, it kind of turned into a funny situation. But I have one other, and it's also an animal story, which is, I don't know why these, came to mind, but so I have a brand new listing we're launching. It's, it's so hot. I'm doing an open house. I'm so excited. I get there early. There's people waiting. I have 10 people standing outside on the street waiting for the open house. And I just can hardly wait. So the owner was also out of town, and they said that, just call them afterwards and we'll go over everything. I'm like, perfect. I love when they're not there because it's a little bit easier just, to access. And so I'm walking up to the front door, and they have 2 German Shepherds, and these German Shepherds are barking and jumping on the door, going nuts. And I'm like, I thought the pets were not going to be here. And turns out the son was staying at the property. And so the son wasn't home. But so I have to get in the house, past the guard dogs, turn off the alarm, and then put the dogs out and then be ready for the open house. So I'm just smiling, and I'm so excited because it's going to sell this today because it's such a hot property. But these dogs are So I'm trying to be really nice. I open the door and the alarm goes off. But it goes off meaning like you have to turn it off, but I can't get all the way to the keypad to turn off the alarm because these dogs are going nuts. And so I'm trying to smile and do all this. So I finally get to the keypad, which is like way across the room. I put in the code, but it doesn't go off, and I can hear an alarm coming. And like they sent the police, they sent a fire truck, they sent the whole everybody, and I'm like, oh my gosh! But it was great. So at the end of the day, we sold the house at the open house, and everyone was so generous and thought that it was funny, but it was so stressful because I'm either going to get a dog bite or a ticket or something, because they get fined every time somebody comes to the door. So it was one of those days where it's like you can't make this stuff up.
You can't control animals either.
Right.
I have one story. It's actually not funny though, so I probably won't even relate it. But I was responsible for the death of one of my clients' dogs during a showing. Ran out in the street and got hit.
Oh,
yeah. So you can't really control what's going on. And I'm surprised the person let you maintain the listing after they came back with a cat that had obviously been abused by you, turning on you.
Well, I can tell you one though. I had a seller. And they had this dog, and the dog was, sweet and all that, was always there, and showings, and it was fine, didn't bother anybody. And then when we got the offer and we went through the inspections, went to sell the house, they said, oh, by the way, we're leaving the dog. And I go, what do you mean you're leaving the dog? And they said, well, but the dog was raised in this house. The dog's attached to this house. The dog has to go with the house, has to stay with the house. I'm like, tell that to the buyer. Well, how am I going to tell the buyer that you're leaving your dog? It's your family dog. But the dog knows this house. It's very attached to the house. Well, that was a tricky one to get around, but yeah, that was not included in the offer. When you say what's included and what's not.
Yes. Well, and I had another one where there was a beautiful fish tank. It was like the focal point. I know we've all seen them when you walk in the house, and it's so gorgeous. It's like a piece of art. And the negotiations came down to, the buyer was going to cancel if the fish were not included. And it was really interesting because the owners were very attached to the fish. So I can understand how that happens.
I had a client, a developer, and he's actually in the marina, and he's built this. He's Val, come over and see my house. And he was a guy who was really did outlandish things. So I walk in the front door, and in the center focal point of the house is an 8-foot by 8-foot floor to ceiling shark tank. Little baby sharks are in the tank, and I'm swimming around. And I'm walking around going, how do you show this house with a shark tank, floor to ceiling glass in the middle of the living room, 8-foot by 8-foot, with baby sharks swimming around? You're going by.
I used to do a shark tank myself. Problem is, all you do is feed them all the time. If you have a predator tank, all you do is feed. Your entire life is feeding, not even enjoying the aquarium.
Yeah, that's probably true, because you see those koi ponds too. You walk up, you see them, and people fight about who gets the koi fish.
Right. Exactly.
I don't.
Oh, sorry.
I had a client, and she was pretty well known. Her husband was, and I went up to visit her, and all of a sudden, Bob, stop me if I've told this story before, but this probably 4-foot by 3-foot wide or 2-foot wide large iguana came loping out into the family room. This big monster looking thing. What the name was, Romeo, I think, but this scary prehistoric looking thing loping across the living room, like a pet. I'm like, he has to go away somewhere when you show the house.
But the thing is, sometimes it's really weird because people are very attached to their animals, obviously, and to them they're totally great. But I had this listing once in Malibu, next to Promises, that house for the rehab thing, and the guy had the most dangerous looking dog I've ever seen. It was like this giant mastiff. And I'd come in, it would just give me the full stink eye, and I was like scared. And they can sense when you got fear, He goes, well, don't act fearful, but I'm scared. Like, come on, dude. But I said, this isn't a dog that will just bite you. I'm just saying it could kill you. And And so he goes, well, if it ever bit anybody like that, I would put him down. I go, but that's after he bites. Okay. I mean, like in the meantime. So yeah, people don't get it. And also some people, buyers, and this again has to deal with the fact that we have to be completely objective when we're dealing with buyers as well. Some buyers are paranoid. I don't care if it's it's a Chihuahua. They're totally paranoid. So you got to tell sellers, look at the dogs, like pen it up or something,
Right. Well, it's interesting because I had this other listing. It was a beautiful house, spectacular, and the owner is a active or very enthusiastic about animals, but he hunts animals, and so he has a game room. And there were some endangered species on this wall. It was really kind of overwhelming, and I had to sit down with them and have an honest conversation and say, not everybody feels the way you do, and you might turn some people off. And he said, this is my passion, this is what I do, and I'm really proud of this, and so I want to keep them up. So, but the reactions on the people's faces when they came into the room were priceless, because it was very, very overwhelming. They were like large game around the world.
There was a house that was for sale, and I took a couple buyers there. Exactly that. I think it was an older gentleman who was an astronaut at one point, but the entire house was filled with those monster big heads, a stuffed elephant, life size, all those things. I found it very creepy to be walking through and have these big, huge heads, staring down at you or looking at you. But I can imagine sitting there watching television or having dinner with those heads.
Looking at you.
At you.
I had this house, and Valerie, like I said, the owner, same as I do, and he was a hunter, and he had heads as well. And he had this giant grizzly rug, like in the master and stuff. And I was concerned when I first took the listing, because I thought, somebody comes in, they're an environmentalist, they love animals like I do, frankly, but I was afraid that was going to be problematic. It was a very, very expensive house. It was like 78 million at the time. But the weirdest thing is, everybody that came in, they were all Chinese, actually. Every single showing was the Chinese, mainland Chinese, and they loved it. They were taking pictures with the animals around them. It was like really crazy. It was like, I thought they'd really be sketched out too, but no, they wanted pictures, with like the moose head over them and everything else. Just so you never really know,
Don't those bear rugs have the big head with the mouth open, like they're going to bite you when they do that? Yeah. They're creepy.
Yeah, super. Super creepy. People were laying down at this house to take pictures laying down next to the grizzly rug. Weird.
Isn't it crazy the things we see, we experience, right?
It is. Well, and this other time, the owner said, you know what, I'll get the house ready for you. I said, perfect. Thank you so much. She's like, I'm going to light some candles. I'll turn all the lights on. I'm like, great. So I'm driving up to the house, and there I can see something is on fire, and I'm like, what is on fire? And of course, instead of running away from the fire, I run into the house towards the fire, because I've got to put the fire out. And she had lit a candle, and the coffee table was on fire. So it wasn't life threatening, but I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, so what am I going to do? So I run into the laundry room to see if there are any like wet towels in the or something. And so I was actually able to find some wet towels in the washing machine and throw them on top of the coffee table to put the fire out. But it's like, you don't have enough time to like call 911, but you just handle all these situations. But I'm glad it was just the coffee table, and the showing went on.
And you recover your cool.
You're a full service agent for sure.
I know. Well, and so I tell my friends, totally. I tell my friends half of what I do, or 95% of what I do, is really not real estate. It's dealing with clients and handling these issues, and just trying to get through some of these crazy situations that we find ourselves in.
That's true. I have a question. So you're down in the Newport Laguna area, which I happen to love, by the way. And so what is, like, has there been anything have you always worked in that area? And if you have, what are some of the things that maybe come up more often than maybe we would see?
I have. So I actually grew up in Orange County. So I've seen it develop over the years. And, it's really interesting. We are seeing a lot of people, come from Los Angeles, trying to, just have a different lifestyle or a second home. But the market is it's really crazy right now. We're just seeing things that we've never seen before, a lot of off-market deals, and also the foreign market is definitely back in Orange County.
Do you have any unusual requests?
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yes, we always have unusual requests. You mean as far as a seller or buyer or both?
Both. Yeah, both.
Like a seller telling you to get out.
Yes. So sellers have a lot of interesting requests. And so I always try to, it's a delicate balance between, it being very unusual or something that we can comply with. But usually it's more like they want specific things done, like they want the air set to a certain temperature. They want, the certain candles to be on, certain lights to be on, certain lights to be off. I feel like every seller is so unique and have so many different requirements. And, a lot of it's more of the vetting. So we're just doing so much more of the vetting and really seeing proof of funds and that sort of thing. But usually, and it's the people want to sell their homes, but then they put all these constraints on us. And I'm sure you both can definitely appreciate that. So certain time frames where it's, a very short window of time. And so they say they want to sell, and then it's hard to get access. So I think that's probably, what we're seeing a lot of. It's kind of interesting.
Have you ever walked into a crazy situation?
Okay, so yes, two.
He's got the best questions.
I know. So beautiful listing on the Bayfront, spectacular. I'm so excited. It's a referral, and this couple, this is slightly inappropriate, so cover your ears. Okay. So the couple,
we're all ears.
They're in their 80s, and it's so delightful, and just pleasure to work with. And so they were very specific about every time I show the house, at the end, I have to make sure that all of the blinds are drawn. Everything's closed. I'm like, okay, no problem. So I'm in the master bedroom and I'm looking for the remote for the electric blinds, and I can't find it anywhere. And so I open up the drawer next to the bed, and I found a whole lot of things that I were not looking for that were battery operated, but they were not the remote for the blinds. And I couldn't look the couple in the eye for the longest time because it was just, more information than I needed to know. But I did find the remote. It wasn't in the master bedroom. And I got those blinds closed, but it was very awkward for me. No one knew, but it was very awkward.
That's nice to know, though. The 80s, they do it.
Like, you know what? Good for you.
Oh my gosh. So have you, and when you're on a listing appointment, have you had any sellers ask you strange things on a listing appointment, or have you ever done anything crazy to get a listing?
Have you done anything crazy to get a listing?
I have. I've had to go to rock concerts. I've had to go where they put the beer on their head and drink through a straw. I've had to do some pretty crazy things.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, you're a beautiful woman, and I can think that a lot of people, sometimes I don't know if it's a date or if it's, a listing appointment. And so that's kind of a delicate balance. And I try to always be very appropriate and professional, but it is kind of interesting because sometimes I'm not sure.
Yeah. Bob, do you have that problem?
Of doing weird things, or just women coming on to me?
Women coming on to you, I'm sure.
I've had my share of that over the years. Yeah. And again, it's like, the thing is my philosophy is never give anything away about what your preferences are or what your personal situation is, because it can only cost you a deal.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. It's like the point is, it's like, all it can do again is cost you something. There's no upside to discussing your personal thing. I've had, gay guys try to fix me up, and I go, hey, I'm not gay, after I have the deal, So it's like, yeah. So I think we all run into that. I'll tell you one really funny thing about that is I had this property I was selling on Sunset, and this woman called me, and she had this accent, which I didn't really recognize her. And she sounded like old, but she was going, what is the seller like? Is he interested? Is he single? She's talking about that. I'm trying to sell the house. I go, well, yeah, he is. he was actually a pretty irritating guy, so I wouldn't have fixed him up anyway. But she goes, I had this really wealthy husband. I'm just looking, I want to meet somebody else. And I said, well, whatever, Anyway, bottom line is she gave me her name. I sold the house to somebody else. And a few years later, she called me on another property. It was actually Spencer Proffer's property.
Oh, yeah. Right. Okay. Right.
And she wanted to come see it. And so I met her up there. And this woman, who is one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my life, it was her. She was like this ex-Brazilian. It was from Brazil, actually. She was this Brazilian model, and then she was like a showgirl in Vegas and stuff. And I'm going, holy, you need to be fixed up. So it was kind of a weird situation, but she was very flirtatious. But it was one of those things again where, hey, I want to sell the house and move on.
Right. Well, it's funny because some of my clients, they don't know if I have a pet or if I have a child or if I'm married or whatever. And a lot of times it's, I'm trying to make it all about them. And so I think that you're right to, kind of take that approach where it's more, it's about them.
Always, when they start to go a little personal with me, I usually turn it around, because you can get people to talk about themselves easily. And then you're talking about them, and then they think you had a great conversation.
That's exactly right. And again, it relates to my mantra, which I may have mentioned in a previous podcast, but I tell my own agents as well, is, if you are really good at talking or selling, that's great. You'll do well. But if you actually just shut up and listen, and actually listen to what they're saying, not just the words, and you're not thinking of your response, then you're going to do great. Because you have to really, first of all, have empathy towards what the other person's situation is. And they'll tell you what they need to hear from you, is the bottom line. But if you're not listening and you're too busy talking, that's not going to happen.
That's true. But with all the TV shows these days, it makes everything look so sexual and sensual and glamorous, and, the clothes and everything's so sexy, and you walk and you strut, and, it gives really the wrong impression of what we really have to manage and do.
That's right. That's exactly right. I spoke once at an Inman conference, and I said, I'm only going to talk if I can say what actually is the truth. Okay. Otherwise, get somebody else. And there's all this big audience of people wanting to know what's the secret to getting super high-end deals and this, that, and the other. And the first thing I said, ignore every single thing you see on those scripted television shows, because that is not reality. It really isn't. I mean, it's entertainment, and that's great. Take it for what it is, but that is not real estate. And if you think that's how you're going to make it in this business, then you better do something else.
I know, it's funny. My daughter loves to watch some of those shows, and I said, "Oh gosh, honey, that's not really what happens. That's not what mommy does." And one of them was like a broker preview, and it was Botox and some sort of cocktail, signature cocktail. And I'm like, "Yeah, we don't really do that."
Yeah, let me go to an open house and have some Botox. or a plethora of other things that they could offer, and film it. That's even better.
You know what's funny is some sellers really want that. And you have to say, hey, look, that isn't going to sell your property. I don't care what you've seen on TV. That is not what is going to sell your property. And, it's like they still somehow think that is the philosopher's stone. That's what's going to be the answer. So it isn't.
It's true. The things I used to do, the parties, when I had my show, on HGTV, I used to do all the events and the parties and the thing and all that, because every house has a story and all that, but it never brought the buyer, but it did satisfy the seller. I mean, they liked all that attention. They liked their house to be showcased, and and you see a little bit still going on, not as much as it used to be, though.
Well, the thing is too, but that's interesting that you did that, because I know, because we've done deals. I mean, you are a consummate deal maker. You understand how to make a deal, how to turn a prospective buyer into an actual sale. But some people just do the TV shows, and that's like a different thing. If you have the skill set, and then you can use a TV show to help maximize exposure, that's a total another thing.
Well, I think that a lot of times I feel like some of the agents, they want to be the celebrity, or they want to be the actor, rather than be the salesperson or the conduit to facilitating the transaction. And so I think that's also an interesting balance that I'm seeing a lot.
They want to be the celebrity, no question. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I will sometimes send clips of things to some really good clients that are in the entertainment business and go, can you believe this? It's some ridiculous thing, with some agent coming through like they are the story, when in fact it's the house that's the story.
That's very true. Yeah, very true. Well, Georgina, it is really great having you on our show today. If our listeners would like to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach you?
My Instagram is Georgina Jacobson Group, and I would love to hear from you anytime. And thank you so much, Valerie and Bob, for having me. It was a pleasure.
Again, thank you so much for joining us. It's
Yeah,
really great. And I see you soon.
You too. Bye.
Hey, Bob.
She's great.
Isn't she lovely?
Yeah, really, really cool. Obviously very successful.
Yeah.
And just a real genuine person, which is the type of, who you really want to deal with.
Yeah, she's real steady and smart, and everybody really, really likes her. And, I'm really thrilled she could join us today too. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us to hear inside stories and have a few laughs. If you have a funny or interesting story, tell us a little bit about it at info@realestatereallaughs.com. Maybe you can be the next guest on our show. Bob, until next week.
Absolutely, Valerie. Great as always. Talk to you next week.
This is Real Estate Real Laughs.